The dense jungle of planet Sci-Fi 7 was eerily silent. Towering trees with glowing blue leaves swayed gently under the twin moons. The Sci-Fi squad moved carefully through the thick undergrowth, their sharp, reptilian eyes scanning for any movement. Commander Villara, a young but skilled Sci-Fi warrior, led the team. She was known for her discipline, her precision, and her unshakable focus. Tonight, they had one mission: capture or eliminate the fugitive who had stolen critical military data. Villara raised her hand, signaling her team to stop. She could hear something. Faint footsteps in the distance. Her sharp green scales shimmered under the moonlight as she adjusted her bioscanner. The fugitive was running fast, unaware that Villara's team was closing in. "Spread out," Villara whispered through her comms. "He's moving toward the clearing." The squad shifted into position, their plasma rifles aimed, ready to fire. The fugitive, a tall, shadowy figure, emerged from the trees, panting heavily. Villara tensed her muscles, preparing to strike. But before she could give the order, bang! A single gunshot echoed through the jungle. Villara's eyes widened as the fugitive collapsed instantly, a clean hole in his forehead. There was no struggle, no warning, just one perfect shot, delivered from an impossible distance. The squad froze. Sci-Fi snipers were deadly, but this was something else. "Who fired that shot?" one of the soldiers muttered, gripping his rifle tighter. Villara scanned the treetops, then the surrounding cliffs. Nothing. There was no sign of movement, no heat signature, no energy reading. It was as if the bullet had come from nowhere. She took a deep breath. "Find the shooter," she commanded. Now, her soldiers spread out, scanning every possible location, but the results were the same. Nothing. Villara clenched her jaw. This wasn't just skill. This was something beyond her understanding. A deep sense of unease crept into her mind. No sniper in the galaxy could make that shot. No Sci-Fi, no AI. But then, a chilling thought entered her mind. Humans. Villara had studied their history, their wars, their so-called legendary soldiers. The Sci-Fi Empire considered them weak, slow, and inferior. Yet somehow, they always found a way to survive. Could a human be responsible for this? She refused to believe it. A human sniper couldn't possibly be more skilled than the Sci-Fi elite. And yet, "Commander," a soldier's voice crackled in her earpiece. "We found something." Villara rushed forward. The soldier pointed to a spent bullet casing on the ground. It wasn't an energy cell. It wasn't plasma-based. It was old-fashioned metal, something humans still used. Villara's eyes narrowed. This was no accident. This was a message. Whoever this sniper was, he wasn't just skilled. He was playing with them. Villara clenched her fists. "We're dealing with something different." For the first time in her career, she felt something unfamiliar, a feeling she had never associated with humans before. Fear. Villara stood still, staring at the spent bullet casing in her hand. It was small, metallic, and primitive, yet it had taken down a target with more precision than any energy rifle she had ever seen. A deep unease settled in her chest. This didn't make sense. Sci-Fi weapons were superior. Their technology was advanced. How could something as outdated as a metal bullet be responsible for such a perfect kill? Her squad moved cautiously through the jungle, scanning the area for any sign of the shooter. But there was nothing. No movement, no heat signatures, no traces of a cloaking device. The air was still, almost as if the jungle itself was holding its breath. A soldier whispered into his communicator, "Commander, there's no one here." It's like the shot came from thin air. Villara didn't respond immediately. Instead, she crouched down and examined the trajectory. The bullet had come from somewhere high, at a downward angle. She lifted her head, scanning the trees, the cliffs, the distant ridges. The shooter had to be up there, somewhere. But no Sci-Fi sniper could have made that shot. Not from that distance, not with that kind of accuracy. A memory surfaced in her mind. Long ago, during an intelligence briefing, she had read about human soldiers. They were known for their unpredictability, their adaptability, and above all, their sheer willpower. It was said that human snipers could stay hidden for days, motionless, waiting for the perfect moment to fire a single bullet. Some reports even claimed that elite human marksmen could hit targets from over 2 miles away. Valera had laughed when she first heard those stories. Now she wasn't laughing. She exhaled sharply. Fan out. Search the high ground. I want the shooter found. Her soldiers moved swiftly, disappearing into the jungle. Valera remained behind, her mind racing. If a human had made that shot, what else were they capable of? Then, a sound. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but her sharp hearing caught it. The softest rustle of leaves. Not the wind. A footstep. Valera's pulse quickened. She turned her head slightly, pretending not to notice, but her eyes scanned the shadows. Nothing. She adjusted her grip on her plasma rifle. She knew someone was there, watching, waiting, studying her, just like she was trying to study them. And then, a voice. Deep, calm, confident. You're wasting your time. Valera spun, rifle raised. But the moment she turned, she knew she was too late. A figure was already behind her. Tall, armored, human. He stood there casually, as if he had been there the whole time, completely unfazed by the weapon pointed at him. His helmet was tucked under one arm, revealing a scared face and piercing blue eyes. His expression was unreadable, calm, but sharp, like a predator sizing up its prey. Valera's fingers tightened on the trigger. Identify yourself. The human smirked. Sergeant Cole Matthews, Terran Recon, sniper. Valera didn't lower her rifle. That shot. How did you do it? Matthews raised an eyebrow. Oh, that. Simple. Training. Talent. And a little thing called physics. You Typhorians rely too much on tech. You forget that sometimes the simplest weapons are the deadliest. His tone was relaxed, almost amused. It infuriated her. You killed our target, she snapped. Why? Matthews shrugged. He was in the way. Valera narrowed her eyes. You expect me to believe that? No, Matthews said. I expect you to realize that I could have taken out your whole squad if I wanted to. Silence. The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Valera hated to admit it, but he was right. He had every advantage. If he had wanted them dead, they would already be dead. Matthews turned slightly, glancing toward the distant ridgeline. Your team's still searching, huh? Waste of time. They won't find me. Valera swallowed her frustration. Why are you here? Matthews exhaled, rolling his shoulders. Same reason as you, I imagine. To see what's really going on in this sector. Valera hesitated. There was something off about this whole mission. The fugitive they had been chasing had stolen military data. But what kind of data? And why was a human sniper hunting the same target? Before she could ask another question, Matthews took a step back. I'll give you some advice, Commander, he said, his voice lower now, more serious. You should go home. Forget about this mission. Valera's grip tightened on her weapon. And why would I do that? Matthews tilted his head. Because you don't want to know the answer to the question you're about to ask. A chill ran down Valera's spine. What did he mean? Before she could demand an explanation, Matthews moved. Fast. Too fast. 1 second he was standing there. The next, he was gone, disappearing into the jungle like a ghost. No sound. No trace. Just gone. Valera clenched her jaw. For the first time in her life, she wasn't sure if she was the hunter or the hunted, and she hated it. Valera remained frozen, gripping her plasma rifle as her mind raced. The human sniper had vanished, slipping into the darkness like he was never there. No Xyphorian could move that quietly. No elite soldier she had ever trained with had that level of control. It wasn't just skill, it was something else. Something she couldn't explain. A voice crackled in her earpiece. "Commander, we've searched the ridges. No sign of the shooter." Villara exhaled slowly. Of course there wasn't. Matthews was toying with them. He had made his presence known on purpose. But why? What was his game? She pressed the communicator. "Regroup at my position. We're pulling out." The decision tasted bitter in her mouth, but she wasn't about to waste resources chasing a ghost. Instead, she needed to think, to analyze, to understand why this human was here and why he had given her that warning. Her squad arrived within minutes, moving cautiously through the undergrowth. The tension in the air was thick. The other soldiers felt it too, the presence of something beyond their control. One of them, Lieutenant Drac, stepped forward. His emerald-green scales shimmered under the moonlight. "Commander, what now?" Villara hesitated. "We return to base." Drac frowned. "Return? What about the shooter?" "We're not equipped to track a human sniper in terrain like this," she admitted. "Not one of his level." Drac's nostrils flared. "We can't just let him get away." Villara met his gaze. "You think I don't know that? But I won't send my soldiers into a hunt that we're not prepared for. This isn't just another rebel fighter or rogue mercenary. This is a Terran Recon sniper. And if half the rumors about them are true, we'd be dead before we ever saw him coming." Drac's expression darkened, but he said nothing. Villara turned back toward the jungle. "We need information, and I know exactly where to get it." The Sci-Fi outpost wasn't far. It was a small intelligence station, set up for monitoring enemy activity in the sector. If anyone had data on human military movements, it would be the station chief, Officer Relok, a former war strategist and one of the most well-informed Typhorians in the Empire. The journey back was tense. Every shadow felt like it held unseen eyes. Every rustling leaf sounded like a whisper of danger. By the time they reached the outpost, Villara's nerves were frayed. The steel gates slid open with a hiss, allowing her squad inside. Sci-Fi guards, clad in black armor, watched them carefully as they entered the dimly lit command center. The air was thick with the scent of burning plasma and machinery. Holographic screens flickered, displaying real-time surveillance data from across the system. At the center of the room stood Officer Relok, a tall, imposing Sci-Fi with dark, scarred scales and piercing yellow eyes. He turned as they approached, his expression neutral. "Commander Villara, I wasn't expecting you." She didn't waste time. "I need intel on Terran Recon snipers. Now." Relok raised an eyebrow. "And why would you need that?" Villara folded her arms. "Because I just encountered one." The room fell silent. Even the soldiers standing by the data terminal seemed to pause. Relok's gaze sharpened. "Are you certain?" Villara nodded. "Sergeant Cole Matthews, Terran Recon. He eliminated our target with a single shot from an impossible distance. And then he disappeared." Relok exhaled slowly. He turned toward one of the terminals, inputting a series of encrypted commands. The holographic display flickered before pulling up a classified Terran military file. A grainy image appeared, a human soldier in full combat gear, his face partially shadowed by his helmet. "Sergeant Cole Matthews. Status: unknown. Last confirmed operation: classified." Relok studied the image for a long moment before speaking. "You're lucky to be alive." Villara frowned. "Explain." Relok gestured to the screen. "Terran Recon snipers aren't just soldiers. There's something else. Something beyond normal warfare." He leaned in slightly. "They are trained in ways that go against all standard military doctrine. They don't just shoot targets. They study them. They break them down psychologically. They make them feel like prey before delivering the killing blow." Villara clenched her jaw. That's exactly what Matthews had done to her. Relok continued, "If he revealed himself to you, Then it wasn't an accident. He wanted you to see him. He wanted you to know he was there. Velara didn't like where this was going. Why? What does he gain from that? Relux's eyes darkened. A message. Velara's blood ran cold. A message to who? To you. To us. To the entire empire, Relux said grimly. And the message is simple. You are not the hunters. You are the hunted. A heavy silence filled the room. Velara forced herself to stay calm. If he wanted me dead, he would have taken the shot. He didn't. Relux nodded, which means he's watching. Studying. Waiting for something. He narrowed his eyes. And that should terrify you more than anything. Velara's mind raced. If Matthews was still here, still observing them, then there was only one question left to ask. What was he waiting for? The words lingered in Velara's mind long after she left Relux's office. You are not the hunters. You are the hunted. The thought made her scales prickle. She had never considered herself prey before. She was a Sci-Fi commander, trained for war, battle-hardened, undefeated. And yet, this human sniper, this ghost, had managed to make her question everything she thought she knew about warfare. Her squad remained silent as they exited the intelligence center. Even Drac, who usually had an opinion about everything, kept his mouth shut. The tension was thick enough to suffocate. Velara stopped just outside the barracks, staring up at the twin moons that hung low in the sky. The jungle beyond the base was dark, its shadows deep and endless. Somewhere out there, Matthews was watching. She could feel it. But why? If he wanted them dead, he could have taken the shot already. Instead, he was toying with them, leaving just enough clues to make her chase after him. She wasn't sure if it was strategy or a warning. Taking a deep breath, she turned to her squad. Get some rest. We move at first light. Drac hesitated. Commander, what's our plan? Velara's golden eyes burned with determination. We find him. The hours passed slowly, but Velara didn't sleep. She sat on the edge of her cot, going over everything in her mind. Matthew's shot. His words. His disappearance. Relux's warning. The pieces didn't fit together. If he was truly a lone sniper, he wouldn't be risking so much to make his presence known. Which meant one thing. He had a reason for revealing himself. Velara frowned. The only reason a sniper would ever reveal himself was to draw attention away from something else. Her mind snapped to attention. Her target, the fugitive they had been hunting. The one Matthews had killed. Why was a Terran Recon sniper eliminating a Sci-Fi fugitive? The stolen data. The mission files. The secret information that her superiors hadn't even told her about. Velara's eyes narrowed. The fugitive wasn't the real mission. The real mission was whatever he had stolen. And Matthews had known. She bolted upright, grabbing her communicator. Drac, meet me in the command center. Now. Drac arrived a few minutes later, his scales still dull from exhaustion. Commander. Velara was already pulling up mission files on the holotable. Something isn't right. The fugitive we were after. What do we actually know about him? Drac blinked. Sci-Fi scientist. Name. Kelsar. Stole classified military intel. Went rogue. That's all we were given. Velara's jaw clenched. Exactly. That's all we were given. She tapped the holotable, bypassing security protocols and accessing restricted data logs. If Matthews had killed Kelsar, it wasn't because he was protecting us. It was because Kelsar had something humans didn't want us to see. The screen flickered as the encrypted files decrypted one by one. Velara and Drac leaned in. The first file loaded. Project Dawn. Highly classified. Velara's breath hitched. Drac whispered, What? What is this? She tapped the file, opening the detailed report. Lines of data scrolled across the screen, revealing something horrifying. Not stolen blueprints. Not military secrets. Genetic experiments. Velura's eyes widened as she scanned the text. The Typhorian military had been running classified biological enhancement programs, experiments designed to alter and improve combat capabilities. But the test subjects weren't Typhorian. They were human. Drac took a step back. "Commander, what the hell is this?" Velura barely heard him. The implications hit her like a plasma blast to the chest. Kelsar hadn't just stolen data. He had stolen proof. Proof that the Typhorian Empire had been experimenting on human prisoners. And Matthews. Matthews wasn't just here to eliminate Kelsar. He was here to bury the truth. Velura's hands curled into fists. No wonder he had let her live. He wanted her to find this. He wanted her to understand exactly what kind of war they were fighting. Her heart pounded. The Typhorian Empire wasn't just at war with humans. They had committed atrocities against them. And now, she was caught in the middle of a truth she wasn't sure she could handle. Drac swallowed hard. "Commander, what do we do?" Velura closed her eyes. She had spent her whole life following orders, fighting for the Empire, believing that her people were superior, that their cause was just. But now she wasn't so sure. And in the shadows beyond the base, she could almost feel Matthews watching, waiting. Because now, Velura had a choice, and he wanted to see what she would do next. Velura's heart pounded as she shut off the holotable. The room felt smaller, colder, like the walls were closing in on her. She had spent her entire life believing in the Typhorian Empire, in its mission, in its power. But now, staring at the classified files, she realized she had been blind. Her people hadn't just been fighting humans. They had been experimenting on them, torturing them. And the worst part, no one had told her. She clenched her fists, her claws digging into her palm. Matthews wasn't just some rogue sniper. He had a mission, a message. And she had just received it. Drac took a cautious step toward her. "Commander, we can't ignore this." Velura inhaled sharply. "I know." Her mind raced. If the Empire was willing to experiment on human prisoners, what else were they hiding? And why was Matthews here alone? No, not alone. A sniper never operated without support. Velura's eyes flicked to the encrypted files again. If Matthews had been hunting Kelsar, it meant the humans knew what the scientist had stolen. It also meant there was a high chance Matthews wasn't the only one out here. The jungle outside the base suddenly felt too quiet. Velura turned to Drac. "I need access to the long-range scanners. Now." Drac hesitated. "Commander, if we start digging." "I don't care," she snapped. "I need to know if we're alone." Drac swallowed hard but obeyed. His claws danced across the console, activating the base's long-range surveillance grid. The holographic map of the jungle flickered to life. Heat signatures appeared. Velura's breath caught in her throat. There weren't just a few human soldiers out there. There were dozens. Drac's scales darkened in shock. That's an entire special ops unit. Velura's mind reeled. This wasn't a simple assassination. This was a full-scale infiltration. The Empire hadn't just been hunting humans. Humans had been hunting them. A chill ran down her spine. "They're not here for Kelsar," she whispered. Drac's voice was barely a breath. "They're here for us." Outside the base, hidden within the dense jungle, Matthews watched through his scope. His camouflage suit blended perfectly with the environment, making him nearly invisible. He had been tracking Velura for days, pushing her toward the truth, making her see what the Empire had done. It had worked. She had found the files. And now she was making the final connection. Matthews exhaled slowly, his finger resting lightly on the trigger. A mission like this wasn't about pulling the trigger. It was about changing minds. And Velura. She was almost there. But she wasn't safe yet. Matthews turned his scope toward the base's far perimeter. Movement. The real enemy was coming. Typhorian Blackguard. The Empire's cleanup crew. They had realized Velura had accessed the restricted files. And now, They were coming to silence her. Matthews tightened his grip on his rifle. Villara didn't know it yet, but she had just become a target. Villara's blood ran cold as she watched the long-range scanner. The heat signatures closing in weren't human. They were Sci-Fi blackguard, her people, the Empire's elite enforcers, the ones who handled internal problems. They were here for her. Drac muttered a curse under his breath. "Commander, they must have flagged your access to the restricted files. If they're sending blackguard, that means they consider me a liability." Villara finished, her voice tight. She had been so focused on Matthews, so obsessed with understanding his tactics, that she had ignored the bigger threat. It wasn't just the humans hunting her now. Her own empire had turned against her. Villara's claws flexed instinctively, her training kicking in. She had led 100 missions, conquered enemy outposts, dismantled entire resistance cells. She knew exactly how the blackguard operated. They wouldn't negotiate. They wouldn't warn her. They would eliminate her. Drac's voice was hoarse. "What do we do?" Villara forced herself to think. The blackguard would move fast, clearing out the base before anyone could react. That meant she had minutes, not hours, to escape. She turned to Drac. "Weapons, gear, secure an exit route. Now." Drac hesitated. "Commander." "That's an order." His hesitation vanished. He saluted quickly before disappearing down the hallway. Villara exhaled slowly, steadying her pulse. Her entire life, she had believed in the Empire, trusted it, served it without question. But now it wanted her dead. She had to move, and she had to decide where she stood. Outside the base, hidden in the jungle's shadows, Matthews adjusted his scope. His breath was slow, controlled. Through the crosshairs, he watched the blackguard move in, 4-man strike teams, advancing in perfect synchronization. They were efficient, silent, lethal. They had one mission tonight: kill Villara. Matthews wasn't surprised. He had seen this before. Sci-Fians turning on their own the moment someone questioned orders, the moment someone thought for themselves. That was why he had pushed Villara to this point, because the second she accessed those files, she had two choices: stay blind and die, or see the truth and live. He adjusted his grip, finger resting lightly on the trigger. Villara had been a soldier her entire life. She wasn't weak. But if she wanted to survive tonight, she had to stop fighting for the Empire and start fighting for herself. The first blackguard team reached the outer wall. Matthews exhaled and pulled the trigger. Villara was halfway to the armory when the alarms blared. Then came the gunshot. A single, precise sniper round. Then another. Then chaos. The base's security systems detected the breach and went into lockdown. Red warning lights flooded the hallways. Emergency klaxons echoed through the air. Villara grabbed her communicator. "Drac. Status." His voice crackled through the static. "Blackguard's already inside. They're wiping out security. This isn't an arrest. Commander, they're executing anyone in their way." Villara gritted her teeth. Of course they were. She could hear the distant sound of gunfire. The base was turning into a war zone. And above it all, the sniper, Matthews. He wasn't just watching anymore. He was intervening. Villara's claws clenched around her weapon. She didn't like this, being forced to rely on him. But right now, she had bigger problems. She sprinted toward the exit tunnels. If she could reach the lower levels, she might be able to escape into the jungle before the blackguard locked down every exit. She rounded a corner and nearly crashed into two blackguard enforcers. Their red visors locked onto her instantly. She had 1 second to act. Villara didn't hesitate. She lunged forward, her blade flashing in the dim light. The first enforcer reacted too slow. Her strike tore through his armor, sending him collapsing to the floor. The second one raised his rifle. A shot rang out. His visor shattered. The enforcer dropped without a sound. Villara whipped her head toward the jungle. The sniper. Even in the middle of battle, Matthews was still covering her. She exhaled sharply, adrenaline pumping through her veins. She didn't have time to question it. She ran. Matthews shifted position, scanning the battlefield. Velara had made it past the Blackguard strike teams, but she wasn't safe yet. The real threat was still coming. A Sci-Fi dropship roared overhead, descending toward the base. Reinforcements. Heavy firepower. Matthews narrowed his eyes. Velara was running out of time. If she wanted to survive, she had to make a choice. He reloaded his rifle. This night wasn't over yet. Velara sprinted through the dimly lit tunnels beneath the base, her breath ragged, her muscles burning. The air was thick with the scent of damp metal and overheated circuits. Overhead, she could still hear the chaos unfolding. The sharp cracks of sniper fire. The distant explosions as the Blackguard tore through the facility. She had spent her whole life fighting for the Typhorian Empire, believing in its strength, in its mission. Now, it wanted her dead. Drax's voice crackled through her communicator. "Commander, I found an escape route. But there's a problem." Of course there was. "Talk to me," she said, forcing herself to keep moving. Drax's breathing was heavy. "They've deployed lockdown drones. If we don't disable the base's security overrides, the exit hatches won't open." Velara cursed under her breath. The Empire didn't take chances. Once someone became a liability, they made sure there was no escape. Her mind raced. The only way to override the lockdown was through the central command hub, which was deep inside the facility, close to where the Blackguard had landed. It was a death trap, but she didn't have a choice. "Send me the coordinates," she ordered. Drax hesitated. "Commander, if you go back in there, just do it." A second later, the holomap flickered to life on her wrist. She turned on her heel and ran straight back toward the danger. From his vantage point in the jungle, Matthews saw everything. Velara had a way out. She had a clear path to escape. And yet, she was running back into the fire. Typical soldier. Typical Sci-Fi. But Matthews knew better. She wasn't just doing this out of loyalty anymore. Something inside her had cracked open. She had seen too much. Learned too much. Now she wasn't just trying to survive. She was trying to fight back. Matthews adjusted his scope, scanning the facility. The Blackguard wasn't done yet. And neither was he. Velara reached the command hub, skidding to a halt just outside the entrance. The massive steel door loomed ahead, locked tight with biometric security. And standing in front of it, waiting for her, was a Blackguard captain. Velara's pulse spiked. This wasn't just any enforcer. She recognized him. Captain Zyros. He had trained her. He had made her. And now he was here to end her. His dark armor gleamed under the emergency lights. "You should have stayed loyal, Velara," he said, his voice calm, almost disappointed. Velara tightened her grip on her weapon. Loyal to what? A system that experiments on prisoners. That kills its own soldiers the moment they start asking questions. Zyros tilted his head. "We don't ask questions, Velara. We follow orders." She shook her head. "Not anymore." Zyros sighed. "Then you leave me no choice." He moved fast, too fast. Velara barely had time to react before he was on her, his blade flashing through the air. She dodged, barely avoiding the strike, but he was already pressing forward, attacking with brutal precision. She had trained under him. She knew his every move. But that also meant he knew hers. Zyros feinted left, then slammed his elbow into her ribs, sending her staggering back. "Give up," he said coldly. "You can't win." Velara gritted her teeth. Maybe not. But she wasn't alone. A shot rang out. Zyros froze. Then his body jerked, a sniper round tearing through his shoulder. Velara didn't hesitate. She lunged, driving her blade straight into his chest. Zyros let out a sharp breath, then collapsed. Velara turned toward the jungle. She couldn't see him, but she knew. Matthews had just saved her life. Again. Velara didn't waste time. She pressed Cyrus's lifeless hand to the biometric scanner. The command hub door slid open with a hiss. She rushed inside, ignoring the alarms screaming overhead. Drax's voice came through her comm. "Commander, you're in. Disable the lockdown and get out of there." Velara's claws flew across the console. The Empire's security system was built to keep enemies out, but she had been one of its highest-ranking officers. She knew exactly how to break it from the inside. The lockdown deactivated. The exits were open. She could escape. But then she saw the final file. The one the Empire never wanted her to see. Her hands trembled as she opened it, and what she saw made her stomach drop. This wasn't just about experimentation. This was about annihilation. The Empire wasn't just fighting the humans. They were planning to wipe them out. Every colony, every outpost, every last human. This war wasn't about conquest. It was about extermination. Velara's breath was shaky. Everything she had ever believed in had been a lie. She had a choice. She could run, or she could fight. Her claws hovered over the console. And then, she made her decision.